Well, holy guacamole, guys. What a crazy week it's been this week. Finally made it to Friday. I hope you guys have a good weekend planned. By the way, I'm Dave. If you're new to the channel, I hope you'll consider hitting subscribe by the end of the video, like, comment, do all that YouTube stuff. And today I was originally planning on talking about all the space stock news in the industry over the past week or two. But as I started compiling everything and putting it all together, I realized that there is just way too much. And so this is going to be an exclusively Rocket Lab episode, which is, of course, my biggest company that I'm invested in the space industry, the one I follow the most closely. And I'll probably round up all the rest of the news around the rest of the space companies in the coming days. There's been some interesting stuff actually coming from Intuitive Machines, from, of course, Vulcan and their BE4 engines with Blue Origin, and a lot of others. So stay tuned for that. But today we do have a ton of Rocket Lab news to get into. So let's go ahead and get into that. But first, I'm going to do my best Obi-Wan Kenobi impression here. And you do not notice the messy background behind me. Sorry about that. Still trying to clean up here. It's been a pretty wild week. Anyway, let's dive into the latest Rocket Lab news updates. Okay, so starting off, I figured we'd just take a quick look at the stock of Rocket Lab. I haven't really talked too much lately about the actual stock price and my own investment in it and how I'm doing and that kind of stuff, how the stock is doing. And I just wanted to address that because I always try to be as transparent as possible when I'm talking about companies that I am myself invested in. So quite a wild week for the stock, and we're going to get into that a little bit later, talking about potential causes and what's going on there. But overall positive, although we have kind of trailed off towards the end of the week. Unfortunately, still up on the week though, so I can't complain too much, although I was quite happy when we spiked very briefly almost to that $7. That must have just been like a single trade perhaps, because I don't think we stayed there for any length of time. But it was a lot of fun having the stock hit almost $7. I definitely didn't see it coming. I did kind of predict that we would have a nice little bounce, but I thought it might be more like the 5.5 to 6.5 range, not quite getting up to 7. So I've been proven wrong there anyway. So just talking about my own investment, and the reason I haven't been talking about it a lot is that I've just been holding lately. It's not very exciting. It's not very sexy. I can't tell you, oh, I got 100% gain in 2 days, or I did this crazy options trade, or I bought more stock. I've just been holding what I own, and I did add a lot at the cost basis down that I was looking for, around, the 3 to 4.5, 5 range. So now that we've gotten up into the 6s and close to 7, I've just been holding. I've been pretty happy with my cost basis. I'd be happy to add more shares if we do have another drop. And sorry if you hear that in the background, by the way. I'm not sure if the mic is picking it up, but there is some construction going on outside. Anyway, you can see my cost basis here in green. This is from my broker, and I'm sitting at around 455 cost basis. I kind of wish I had been a little bit more opportunistic in adding heavy when we were in the high 3s, but I'm still quite happy with my 455 cost basis. You can let me know down below in the comments if you have me beat on that. Anyway, when I took this screenshot, the price was around $6.47, so pretty significantly up over my cost. And after sitting at a loss on Rocket Lab for many months, it does feel very good to have significant gains on the company, especially one that I have researched so thoroughly and follow so closely and really do believe in. Now, just screenshotting my actual numbers here, you can see I do have 10,000 shares worth, as of the screenshot, about 64,000 American. Bought in worth at I bought in about $45,000 worth, so I'm up just a little under 20,000. Not too bad if you ask me, in a pretty short period of time. Pretty pleased with this return, really. Now on to why the heck the stock was moving the way it did this week. We had some pretty big moves. Well, right now we're looking at Wall Street Bets here, and this one post did generate a lot of steam. This guy here had quite a bit of success trading short-term call options, and he made a post that Rocket Lab was going to be his next big trade. You can see down here he had 673 likes, 538 comments, and this post did get a lot of traction, causing Rocket Lab to be one of the most talked about stocks in the retail trader space. Something I found very interesting. I mean, he's talking about stuff I'm sure a lot of us already know about, as people who follow the Rocket Lab company closer, talking about the upcoming launch and recovery and stuff. I do find this a little ironic because those of us who've been tracking the stock for a long time know that every time we seem to have a successful launch, there's actually a little bit of a sell-off after the successful launch as opposed to a jump. So some of this is kind of funny, but I guess I can't complain too much about the stock getting a little bit more attention from retail traders. Now, we did see that it hit number 6 in Wall Street Bets in terms of mentions. This is just like a snapshot of a 1-hour window, but you can see, it's higher even than SPCE, which is traditionally the space meme stock that gets the most love on Wall Street Bets. SPCE not even on this list, but we did have, Rivian, SPY is always there, just S&P 500, and then Rocket Lab just behind Tesla. So a big bump in the amount of attention Rocket Lab has been getting. I made a quick poll in the Discord server, and by the way, there is a link to our Discord server down below if you're interested in joining. We talk a lot about space companies and investing and just, whatever we want, share a picture of your cat. I did ask if people think it's a good thing that Wall Street Bets pays more attention to Rocket Lab, if we want Rocket Lab to become like a big Wall Street Bets meme stock. And I thought this would be split much more evenly, but at least among the people who answered this poll, it was all pretty much no. We had one yes and the rest were no's. People didn't want Rocket Lab to become a meme stock. They wanted it to stay trading more on its fundamentals and on the value of the company than just like short squeezes and trying to drive the stock price up and that kind of thing, which I do respect, but it's also hard to complain if a company you do own gets driven way up. And this would, present a bit of a dilemma for some of us who are massive fans of the company, but also pride ourselves in being investors. It is, if the stock price did skyrocket well beyond what you consider to be fair value at this point in time, would you sell the company even knowing that you absolutely love the company? It'd be very painful to do, but there has to be a number where you'd be willing to sell your shares. Otherwise, you're not really an investor. You're more of just, a fan or whatever else you want to call it. So yeah, we haven't hit that point yet for me, but I will be sure to let you know if I ever do decide to sell any of my stock. We're still a ways away from me even considering that at this point, though. And if I were to sell it, it would only be if I thought it was overvalued on the short term, because I really still do love the company over the long term. I would only really sell it if it just became so crazy disconnected from the fundamentals that it just became, ridiculous, in my opinion. Anyway, continuing on, let me know down below how you feel about Rocket Lab trading in that meme stock area with Wall Street Bets and all the rest. But on to some real news around the company. So Rocket Lab did sign a new multi-launch deal to further deploy Synespective's constellation. They've already launched previous satellites for Synespective, and this will be taking the total number of Electron missions ordered by that company to 6. Very nice to see. So clearly Synespective is happy with the service it's been getting from Rocket Lab, as they're the only launch provider that Synespective is using. They're not going with, ride shares or any other potential competitors, although, there's not too many competitors out there these days. If we look around, Virgin Orbit's kind of gone, Astra gave up on their smaller rocket, the new one's not ready. Rocket Lab kind of stands alone right now. It's kind of nice, to be honest with you, although I still am watching the likes of Firefly and a lot of these other ones quite closely. So Rocket Lab is now scheduled to launch 3 missions for Synespective beginning in late 2023 from their Launch Complex 1 in New Zealand. And in addition to providing Synespective with a high degree over the schedule and orbit by flying as a dedicated mission as opposed to a rideshare, Rocket Lab also delivers the unique ability to perform an advanced mid-mission maneuver with Electron's kick stage, kind of like a photon variant there, that will shield their satellite from the sun to reduce radiation radiation exposure ahead of the deployment. It's very delicate instruments doing these radio observations are these satellites. So great news for the company. I'm always happy when I see a new launch deal for Rocket Lab, and especially when it's a multi-launch deal, not just a one-off. Love to see those even more. And then a little bit of unfortunate news here. So Rocket Lab was originally planning to have a launch tonight, as of this recording anyway, tonight from when I'm recording it. Now they're targeting no earlier than July 16th UTC for the launch of their Baby Comeback mission. This is an exciting mission for a few reasons, not the least of which being the fact that they are taking another step forward in their reusability efforts for this Electron. I was originally planning to live stream this mission. Of course, with the delay, that may no longer happen. We'll have to see if it actually goes off in the new scheduled time. If it does, I may try to squeeze in a live stream if I'm available, just hang out with you guys, have a couple drinks, talk about rockets and stocks and whatever you guys want to talk about in the chat. I always have a lot of fun with the live streams, and it has been a while. So there are some internal vehicle changes to improve the ability of this rocket to keep water out of the areas where it's not wanted. According to Peter Beck in an interview, they've also taken this opportunity to improve the water tightness of the overall vehicle. As we all know, obviously, they are no longer catching these rockets out of the air, and they're all going to be just recovered from the water and attempted to relaunch in the future. Now, Rocket Lab also replaced the parachute on the stage with a lighter version. Now that they no longer need to catch it out of the air, they don't have to make it quite as heavy duty. Hopefully, there's some weight savings on that, and they can optimize it for a marine recovery as opposed to an air recovery. So any weight savings really helps when it comes to the payload you can put into orbit for a rocket. He did say, though, they're taking a more methodical approach to reusability. They're making incremental steps, getting closer to reuse. They're not going to be going for it with this next rocket. So even though it's recovering, they're not just going to slap it back on a launch stand and relaunch it extremely soon. They're going to first just launch a single reused Rutherford as a part of a launch, and then start to reuse more and more components before eventually relaunching the entire vehicle. He did say that Rocket Lab has a timeline in place for reusing the full booster, but they don't want to share what that is with us yet. They are a company that likes to be very close to accomplishing something when they announce it. They don't like to make big proclamations far out in the future. Something I really respect about the company, but at the same time, something that can be frustrating when I really want to know when we're going to see that first reused Electron. Next up, we had some new details on Rocket Lab's acquisition of Virgin Orbit's assets. I found this extremely interesting. It's from Adam Spice, the CFO of Rocket Lab. We did hear a lot about this previously. Rocket Lab placed the winning bid of $16.1 million on the headquarters of Virgin Orbit, as well as a lot of the equipment, manufacturing equipment that Virgin Orbit did have. And I really didn't have a ton of context around, how big is this to Rocket Lab? How does it the equipment they're buying compare to what they already have? What's the actual worth of it? And how big is that headquarters they're now getting access to? So a lot more details here that I found very interesting. If they bought this equipment on the open market, Adam Spice said it would cost over $100 million, and of course they only paid $16 million, so a great deal for it there. On top of that, if you're buying it brand new, you'd have to wait over a year for these complex machines and equipment to arrive, and now they're getting it right away, so a big help for Neutron and their space systems department there. Also, he mentioned, for every one piece of equipment we have here being Rocket Lab, there might be 5 over there. So over there, obviously being Virgin Orbit. Comparing his company's headquarters to the old Virgin Orbit facility, I think they took a Jurassic Park kind of spare no expense approach. So sounds like Rocket Lab is getting a ton of equipment out of this deal, and kind of goes to show the efficiency may not have been there so much for Virgin Orbit. They're just buying any and every piece of equipment. Rocket Lab being much more tight on those purse strings, which is kind of good for as an investor. And now really we're just going to have tons of machines to be able to use and pump out those satellites and rockets. The other thing I found extremely interesting, and I really didn't have any context on before, is the company headquarters size. The headquarters of Rocket Lab currently in the United States, just across the street from the Virgin Orbit headquarters they purchased, is about 60,000 square feet, which sounds quite large to me. But the Virgin Orbit building is more than twice that size at 140,000 square feet. So an absolutely massive increase in the footprint of Rocket Lab in the area and just their manufacturing footprint in general. When they originally announced this, I was thinking, oh, maybe it's around the same size as their current headquarters and they're doubling their space, but no, it's even more than a doubling. It's more like a tripling. And then some more details on how this will kind of be used. So another thing I was curious about. So as it is, the current headquarters factory floor is where the company builds out its avionics and propulsion systems. So that's Electron's Rutherford engine, and it will be Neutron's Archimedes engine. Right now, the Rutherfords are then sent back to New Zealand, where they are integrated into the Electron rockets. I assume now that we're launching in the United States as well, they're also sent to Virginia to launch from there. The company has a facility under construction near its Virginia launch complex where the Archimedes engines will be sent for Neutron construction. And then, of course, Space Systems, which is their satellite manufacturing division we talk so much about, is also located within that company's headquarters. So within that 60,000 square feet, we're talking about Space Systems as well as avionics and propulsion. But now that we have all this space, the bulk of engine manufacturing and assembly will be moved to that much larger Long Beach facility that used to be Virgin Orbit's, allowing Rocket Lab to expand its Space Systems division at its headquarters, which is great because Space Systems is really right now the cash cow of the company, bringing in the majority of the revenues and the profits for Rocket Lab. So thrilled to see that we'll have a lot more room for expansion on Space Systems, and hopefully this can drive cheap Neutron development for the next few years. Something we've already talked about before, but he did reiterate that we're planning for 15 Electron missions this year, and next year the plan is to scale up to 20, as well as the first Neutron launch sometime in the fourth quarter. Although a lot of internet watchers out there think this may be a very aspirational timeline, and we're more likely to see Neutron launching 2025, which I would still be completely fine with, and is still extremely fast for rocket development. This was a little bit confusing to me, and I think Rocket Lab is just trying to change their language on the availability of rockets from a kind of marketing standpoint, maybe. He did say that the goal is to be able to have a few spare rockets, but we're not yet able to get there because the demand has been such that customers are consuming everything we can build. Now, this is very confusing for me because the line that they've always said in previous earning calls and things like that is that the problem is customer readiness. There's never been a customer that they haven't had a rocket for. They always have rockets available, but the customers are always pushing back their launches, not ready to launch and that kind of thing, which made a lot of people think that it's more of a demand issue, not getting that launch cadence up fast enough. This is kind of trying to change that narrative, I think, and say that the demand is there. I'm not too sure how much stock I put into this yet, but it is good to see demand is rising and the launch cadence is rising. 15 launches this year for Electron should be great. 20 launches next year, I would think, would be definitely profitable in just that Electron line of business for the company, at least according to my model, especially if we're talking about some of those rockets being reused. That definitely does save some money, at least according to the spreadsheet I did draw up quite a while back. Talking about the competition, he did say that he thinks there's going to continue to be a winnowing of the field, which there already has been. It's a tough business. Talking specifically about launch here. So there's not that many players left that are like serious competitors. We have a lot of startups. There's a lot of actually European startups and small companies, but when I think about who he could be referring to, the names that come to mind are really Relativity, Firefly, and ABL are the big ones. Obviously, Virgin Orbit's no longer around. I wouldn't consider Virgin Galactic Launch. They're more on the space tourism side of things. So the number of launchers is dropping. Another story we had, and I'm already starting to lose my voice here, SpaceX neared a $150 billion valuation after a new share offering of the company trying to raise additional capital. The reason this applies to Rocket Lab is Rocket Lab is really the number 2 in the space launch area for the United States. So a lot of people are trying to back their way into a Rocket Lab valuation off of this, saying, well, SpaceX is worth $150 billion. Surely Rocket Lab, as the number 2 player, is worth, X billion. Personally, I don't really like that way of looking at it. I like to value Rocket Lab based off their own future revenues that I think they're going to have, project out how much money I think they're going to make, and value the company that way, versus just saying, well, surely the number 2 is worth, 10% of the number 1 or whatever. I don't think that's really a good way of trying to value the company, but it is interesting to see, that's where the sky is the limit. That's where valuations can go for companies in this industry. And then, just an interesting thread on Twitter here I wanted to highlight for everyone. A lot of back and forth in the comments, but some good discussions to be had for sure. This person saying that Rocket Lab's being even more ambitious than SpaceX by a long shot because Falcon 1 did 670 kilograms, and then their next vehicle did 10 tons, whereas Rocket Lab, their first vehicle, does 300 kilograms, their next vehicle doing 13 tons, so obviously they're going up by a lot more. A lot of debate on the validity of this argument. Some people saying, well, you shouldn't be comparing Starship to Neutron, not Falcon 9. Other people saying, yeah, but it's way longer for Neutron to be developed between Electron and Neutron versus Falcon 1 and Falcon 9. A lot of good points there, but what I found the most interesting to highlight for everyone is that Falcon 9 Block 1 is just 10 tons, and Falcon 9 is now flying, 20 plus. So clearly, after a rocket launches, that's not always the final capacity, and there's often many block improvements. So Neutron here, 13 tons out of the gate. Very possible we get some more future improvements and, block version changes. So wouldn't it surprise me for that to even grow in the future? And Peter Beck has actually said in interviews that there is room for Neutron to grow. So that was what I wanted to highlight on this discussion, although you're welcome to chime in. Definitely a very interesting, lively discussion on Twitter. Okay, final Rocket Lab update for the day. This is actually very related to Varda. If you're not aware, Varda's satellite is the basically first pharmaceutical manufacturer in orbit. People call it the first space factory. I don't know if I'd go that far. It's a very tiny factory if you'd call it a factory. But anyway, some new details on this, which was interesting. The mini lab is growing crystals of a drug commonly used to treat HIV, and the idea is that growing these crystals in microgravity definitely helps compared to growing them in gravity. There's a lot less impurities, and I'm not a scientist, but apparently there's major benefits there. Now, the interesting thing here is that this is a capsule that is going to be re-entering the Earth's atmosphere very soon, and Rocket Lab has worked with Varda on the satellite bus, with the power module, providing electricity, communications, propulsion, and attitude control. So, sometime in the next few weeks, Rocket Lab's ground team will uplink a command to fire the spacecraft's thrusters for a braking maneuver and drop the satellite out of orbit, sending it on a course back into Earth. This will be the first time Rocket Lab has even kind of indirectly worked on kind of a re-entry mission for a space capsule, something that they may end up working on in the future for Neutron, so hopefully they'll get some experiences on re-entry with this interesting mission. And by the way, Rocket Lab does have several more of these Varda space factories lined up that will be launched in the future. A great contract for the space systems side of the business. So that's all the news I have for you on Rocket Lab from this past week. Let me know how your own portfolio has been doing. If you're investing in Rocket Lab as well, what are you doing right now? Buying, selling? Did you take some gains on this recent rise, or are you in it for the long run? Always interested to know. And yeah, great news, new contracts, a lot going on for Rocket Lab right now, and very excited excited for the future. I hope you guys do have a great weekend. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It helps so much. I'll see you in the next video, and bye for now.
Yeah.